Recently, Nintendo finally re-released Super Mario Galaxy 2 for the Nintendo Switch. And it only cost $1 billion! Ever since Mario 3D All-Stars, people have been begging for this game to come over, and I was definitely one of them. Now, if you all have watched my channel for any length of time, you would likely know that I do not care for Super Mario Galaxy.
What?
I might do a more specific video as to why in the future, but my distaste for the game made me even more curious to return to Mario Galaxy 2. I hadn't played it since I was really young, which basically meant that I remembered nothing about it. So when I got it for the Switch 2, it was basically like playing a brand new game. So the question is, after 100%ing it, how do I feel about Super Mario Galaxy 2? It's alright. I definitely enjoyed it much more than the first game, though a lot of my main issues do still apply here. I would say the general structure in 2 is much better though, so I think I liked this game a good amount more. But one part about the first game that I didn't really love were the boss fights. Many of them felt just a bit too annoying for me. So I thought, hey, while the game is fresh in my mind, let's rank every single boss fight in Mario Galaxy 2 from the worst to the best. We'll be judging these based on a few main criteria. First and most importantly, is the boss actually fun to fight? Does it have a good idea at its core, and is it challenging enough to execute? A good boss fight should be a solid challenge after all. I will also take the boss's aesthetic into account, though it won't be nearly as important of a factor. Also, I'm not including any Comet versions of a boss because they're almost all just the same fight, but you can't get hit now. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. Okay, so I'm taking this list of bosses from the wiki, and I don't know if I would have considered this first guy a boss, but I might as well include them to avoid annoying comments. 23, Mandibug Stack. Literally, all you have to do for this guy is ground pound on it twice. Mandibug is a generic enemy that we see earlier on in Puzzle Playing Galaxy, so this boss is pretty much the equivalent of just giving a Goomba a helmet. How exciting. Oh right, but what can the boss actually do for attacks? Well, it can run at you. This boss gets even easier if you know about the homing ground pound, which is performed by spinning and then quickly hitting ZR. Honestly, I really don't think this guy should count, but I guess it has music and a cutscene, so sure I guess. 22, Glamdozer. On my first playthrough, this guy immediately stuck out to me as being extremely weak. First off, its design. Easily the ugliest boss in the game, but I did say that gameplay was the most important thing here. Well, unfortunately for Glamdozer, it might just be the easiest boss in the game. They're the boss of Flipsville Galaxy, so their boss fight implements this galaxy's main gimmick of these floors that you can ground pound through. I think conceptually that's a good idea, and it makes total sense to build off of this for this fight. However, Nintendo doesn't really do anything to stop you from cheesing this. The weak point of Glamdozer is on their stomach, so you have to ground pound through a platform as they go over it. While you're on the underside though, the Glamdozer doesn't attack you. They do try and spit out projectiles, but I don't even know what they are since they don't come around to hit you. Maybe Glamdozer does have some form of cheese protection, but if they do, it takes way too long to activate. As it is now, you could just camp on the underside of the platform and win the fight without ever getting in danger. I think it's safe to say that this fight is just incredibly lame. 21, Major Burrows. Here is our first boss from Boss Blitz Galaxy, which is meant to be a boss rush through some of the bosses from Mario Galaxy 1. I said boss way too many times in that sentence. Like a boss. I just did not have fun fighting this guy. Unlike the last two though, he does at least provide a decent challenge. He'll dig through the ground, and to defeat him, Mario has to ground pound to send him jumping back out. Unfortunately, it only works when he's halfway out of the ground, but that is understandable for the sake of this fight being an actual challenge. What I don't love is that once he's out of the ground, you have to chase him down. The movement in the Mario Galaxy series has always been my biggest gripe with it, and I found that running after Major Burrows just wasn't that fun. It doesn't feel particularly hard to catch, it just feels like Mario isn't trying hard enough. Not to mention that of the bosses in Galaxy 2, it just has one of the less interesting designs and concepts. And it activates my trauma. 20, Rolladillo. This is our first boss fight to be focused on a power-up rather than Mario's normal moveset. For this fight, Mario gets to use the Rock Mushroom, and I generally find this power-up to be a lot of fun. Maybe one day I'll do an actual star ranking for this game, but I usually enjoyed any star that had this because of its unique movement. Unfortunately though, I really don't feel like Rolladillo used it that well. He will also roll around the arena just like Rock Mario, but every so often he'll get dizzy. Whenever he does, you just have to smack him where he isn't covered by a shell. Do that 3 times and the boss is over. The reason I don't love this is because I feel like using the Rock Mushroom's ability outside of just dealing damage actually hurts you here. It's way easier to just long jump out of the way, and from my experience, that seems to make Rolladillo get dizzier much quicker. If you try rolling away, not only does Rolladillo seem to attack for longer, but there's also a better chance he gets dizzy while you're too far away. I just wish the Rock Mushroom got a fight where we got to use its unique movement a lot more. Also, I got totally scammed. 19. Bouldergeist. Here we have another boss returning from Mario Galaxy 1. I just feel like this fight has way too much waiting without much danger. In order to damage him, you have to use the black booze it spawns to blow him up. Now first off, I feel like this guy would probably be a little confusing for Mario Galaxy 2 players since this is literally the only place the black boos appear in the entire game. In Mario Galaxy 1, the whole level led up to the boss fight as you have to use the black boos in puzzles, but since Bouldergeist is just part of a boss rush here, there's no time to introduce the concept. So if someone decided to play Mario Galaxy 2 first, I could see this causing some confusion. I mean, I guess you could blame the idiot who played the one with 2 first, but whatever. Now the black boos will only spawn in from rocks that Bouldergeist throws at you, but the annoying part is that these rocks are totally random, at least from what I can tell. You could only get 1 boo, or if you're lucky, you could get 2 boo spawns. Since you need to hit him with 3 boos to move on to the floating head phase, I found a lot of the fight to just be begging for the lucky spawn so you wouldn't have to waste more time running around. I can at least give the boss credit for being kinda fun when you do get the boos though. Since you have to hit the main body to deal damage, you could try and maneuver the boo spin around the obstacles Bouldergeist creates. Managing to thread the needle and hit the main body is fairly satisfying. I think if there was just a bit less randomness involved, I would have liked this fight a bit more. 18. Dig-a-Leg. The focus of this fight is on the new drill item, and I honestly think they did the best they could here. This boss fight is unique in that it takes place entirely on a 2D plane, being the only fight in the game to do so. The goal here is to use the drill and dig through this dirt circle to crash into Dig-a-Leg on the other side. During the fight, it'll shoot out several Dig-a toward Mario, which will ride along the ground in an attempt to hit him. They're pretty easy to avoid though. Honestly, the main challenge of this fight is actually hitting the glass part of the boss instead of bonking away. It's kind of fun to try and line up your shot here, but honestly the fight just feels a bit too simple to go up any higher. 17. Squizzard. Initially, I was planning on putting this guy much higher up on the list. The idea behind this fight is actually pretty good. The arena is filled with quicksand, which means you have to try and find stable places to stand and attack. The focus of this fight is on the fire flower, and you have to try and shoot fire into the Squizzard's mouth. This can be somewhat tricky to do though because of the projectiles he throws, is what I wish I could say. Unfortunately, the fireballs are able to destroy all of his attacks. That by itself wouldn't be too bad if you actually had to aim your attacks, but due to the fireball's hitbox, you can literally just stand still and spam and you very likely won't ever get hit. That is a very disappointing fumble as it takes out almost all of the challenge in this fight. You don't even have to worry about breaking the cannons he spawns on the final phase because you're completely safe as long as you spam fireballs. Now with this cheese being so bad, you may be wondering why Squizzard still ended up quite a bit higher than a similarly cheesable boss like Glamdozer. Well, that's because the cheese here is both less consistent and way less obvious. On my playthrough, I didn't even realize the fireballs would be able to do this, which is why I actually enjoyed the fight a lot more. But once you do know of this strat's existence, all tension in this fight is sadly lost. 16. King Caliente. He's another pretty iconic boss coming from the first game. I do like the idea behind this fight, even if it is quite easy. King Caliente will sit in the center of his lava-based arena and shoot out projectiles towards Mario. First he'll shoot out 3 flaming orbs, and then he'll shoot out a coconut. Since Mario can safely hit a coconut without burning his hands off, he can spin to send that flying back right towards King Caliente. As the fight goes on, Mario has to smack 3 coconuts into King Caliente, but he'll also be able to start hitting the coconuts back towards Mario in return. It's pretty fun playing tennis with this guy, but I do find it to be quite easy because of how generous the spin's hitbox is. For example, the tennis fights against Ganondorf and Ocarina of Time feel much trickier, since the speed of the electric ball can actually make it difficult to hit sometimes. Now, I do definitely think it makes sense for the Zelda series to be harder, but I feel like they went a bit too easy with King Caliente. There's almost no challenge to actually getting the hit in, and even his projectiles are extremely easy to avoid. The little blue fire guys he spawns on the last hit are nice, but still not quite enough to make this an actual challenge. They did at least nail the feel of hitting the coconut back though. Even if it is easy, I did enjoy hitting it every single time. 15. Pee-wee Piranha. This guy is of course the very first boss in the game, so it being low on the list is pretty understandable. Honestly, it did make it quite a bit higher than most first bosses could ever hope for. This is about as simple as it gets. All Mario has to do is use his spin attack to break his eggshell. Once it's broken enough, Mario just has to hit Pee-wee Piranha 3 times for the fight to be over. It's a pretty solid tutorial for the spin attack, but not much else beyond that. 14. Dino Piranha. I think it only makes sense to have the 2 Piranha babies back to back, especially since Dino Piranha was the first boss in Mario Galaxy 1. Obviously in this game it's found in Boss Blitz Galaxy, and I think it works just as well as always. The goal here is to smack the orb on the tip of its tail tail, causing it to fly back and hit Dino Piranha in the face. This has a very similar concept of being a spin tutorial, but I think having the orb on the tail just feels a lot better to hit. Following the tail's movement to hit it back specifically is a lot better than the bigger target on Pee Wee Piranha. I also think this guy works well as the first in a boss rush to ease the player in. 13. Fiery Dino Piranha. But we aren't done with the piranhas just yet, as Dino Piranha also got another version. This time, he's on fire. That obviously makes the fight more difficult, but not so much so that I feel like they needed to rank differently. Now, the orb on the tail will go from being lit to being burned out. If you try and hit the tail while it's on fire, you're obviously gonna get burned. So this extra bit of danger adds a good amount of depth to the fight as you try and catch the tail while also making sure it's safe to hit. That's made even scarier by the tail leaving small trails of fire, which can also damage Mario. Overall, just a really great remix of the first fight, and it works well at the end of the boss rush because now it's like poetry sort of, it rhymes. But before I move on, it would be a complete and utter failure on my end if I did not mention the amazing song here. This is easily my favorite boss theme from either game. It's got such a great energy to it, and I love using it in videos. 12. Sorbetti. I would say this is sort of like our last three, as it's another one that requires the spin attacks to defeat. It's definitely the hardest of the bunch though, and that's because of how the weak spot works. Sorbetti has a big red spot for a nose, and that's precisely where Mario has to spin to deal damage. What makes this difficult is the fact that Sorbetti rolls around the arena like a snowball, so that can make pinpointing the exact location of where to spin much harder than in previous fights. It does feel pretty good to sneak a hit in right before the nose gets obscured. On top of the pretty solid idea for the fight, I think this guy might just have my favorite boss arena in the game. As the boss for Freezy Flight Galaxy, it makes sense that he's snow-based, and what better snow-based boss than a snowman? Sorbetti itself acts as the head, whereas the arena is the body. You can even see the sticks as the arms here. Do you think it hurts when he breaks his arm? Overall, I think this is a pretty solid fight and uses the spherical arena concept extremely well. 11. Giga Lakitu. As the boss of Yoshi Star Galaxy, it makes complete sense for him to be centered around Yoshi. As a Lakitu, he'll throw Spinies at the arena to try and kill Mario, but with Yoshi's ability to put them in his mouth, you can send them flying right back toward the boss. This is sort of like a more involved King Caliente, where you have to use the boss's projectiles against them. In Giga Lakitu's case though, I find actually making the shots much more satisfying as they require a bit of aim. As the fight goes on, Giga Lakitu will even be able to move around to try and dodge the shots, though it's still not too horribly difficult to just wait out his movements. I especially like how on the final phase, he'll back away from the arena and throw even more Spinies. It ups the danger and difficulty quite a bit, which I think keeps the fight engaging. I especially love how it feels to snag a Spiny in midair. If a Spiny lands on the ground, it'll take 2 Yoshi attacks to get in his mouth, but if you can get it in midair, it only takes 1, which is extremely satisfying. Oh yeah, and after the first hit, Giga Lakitu will also strike down Thunder in the arena, and then promptly get sued by Lack of Thunder. Overall, I think this works great as a Yoshi tutorial. 10. Bowser 1 and 9. Bowser 2. Now it's time for us to run through all of this game's Bowser battles. As is tradition with 3D Mario games, you have to face the King of the Koopas multiple times. All of his fights follow the same premise, but just get harder as they go. Essentially, Mario will be placed on a floating planetoid with Bowser being absolutely enormous nearby. Meteors will begin to fall onto the planetoid, and after that, Bowser will punch it. This sends the meteors floating back into the air, so now Mario has to ground pound on them to send him flying back into Bowser. It's not very difficult to do, but I kinda like how it feels to send those meteors blasting off. It's cool that you actually have to aim a bit as well, though just ground pounding in the center of the symbol will always deal damage. Now that was all about his first fight in Bowser's lava layer. His second fight takes place at Bowser's gravity gauntlet. The premise is exactly the same, but now the meteors in Bowser's fist will cause shockwaves across the planet. This just adds a bit more to avoid, so by default the second fight is better. 8. Bowser 3. Being the final rendition, this has a few more changes. It starts very similar to Fight 2, but now the shockwaves from the punch look like basketballs. During the last hit, Bowser will also be able to shoot fire down toward the stage. Well, I say last hit, but after you hit him a third time, Bowser's not dead. He'll come back for one last effort, and this is the most different part of the fight. Now, instead of being on a central planetoid, Mario will go between several of the meteors he can ground pound on. Now though, it requires a bit more aiming and timing since Bowser will be jumping around in the background. Honestly though, since you can constantly get more meteors, this portion might just be the easiest yet since you don't really have to wait around. Still, I think it was a fine enough addition, and overall, the Bowser fights in this game were pretty alright. 7. Bugaboom. This is another returning boss from the first Mario Galaxy, but it actually isn't in Boss Blitz Galaxy. Instead, you can find it in Puzzle Plank Galaxy. Now the last boss we saw from there was So I'm happy to say that the Bugaboom is a big improvement. Now the reason he got the star in his own star rather than being in the Boss Blitz is because he actually got a decent change. The original fight was focused on the bee mushroom, which honestly I didn't love. I just kind of think jumping with the bee mushroom is a bit annoying. But now it uses the cloud flower, which is probably my favorite power up from either of the games. The goal is to use the clouds to jump onto the Bugaboom's back. While this isn't really that hard to do, it is fun because of the flexibility the cloud flower allows for. Plus sometimes the Bugaboom will go sideways, which can make it harder to hit. 6. The Womp King. This is another returning fight, but this time from Mario 64. He's seen in Throwback Galaxy, which is a massive reference to Womp's Fortress. Not only was that one of my favorite stages from Mario 64, I also just love references, so that undeniably gave the Womp King a bit more credit in the list, but on top of that, the fight itself is also really fun. The battle has been updated to make it much more interesting, but the concept is still generally the same as it was in Mario 64. The Womp King will slam his face down onto the floor, and Mario has to ground pound on his back 3 times. Now in Mario Galaxy 2, the Womp King is much thicker, meaning it takes more effort to actually get on its back. After the first hit, the Womp King will also be able to spawn in some wimps, along with the shockwave to stun Mario. Finally, the Womp King will actually be able to kill Mario instantly in this game due to how crushing works. In Mario 64, he would just deal a bit of damage, but you would be able to walk away if you got hit. So that definitely makes this version of the fight much more dangerous. With that being said though, it's still not that bad, especially with the ground highlighting where he's gonna slam down. I do like the improvements added here though, so I don't really mind it's still fairly low difficulty. Honestly, the hardest part of this battle was fighting the urge to do the Mario 64 clip, because in Mario Galaxy 2, it doesn't work. 5. Prince Picante. He's a sort of spin-off of King Caliente we saw earlier in the list, but I actually think this guy did a much better job with the concept. The idea is still the same, with Mario having to hit coconuts back into the boss to deal damage, but everything else around the fight has been changed. The arena is now on a sheet of ice. Now I know a lot of people don't like ice controls in games, but honestly I usually find them to be a fun challenge. In fact, the ice physics are actually the biggest part of Mario Galaxy's movement that I enjoy, as it feels really fun to quickly skate around. Also fun fact, you can skate backwards if you hold the crouch button. Totally useless outside of aura farming, but it's still cool. Prince Picante will also shoot out many more fireballs, which can actually land on the ice and form small patches of lava. That makes the battle a lot more dangerous, and due to it being more unpredictable when Prince Picante will even shoot the coconut, you could end up in a tight spot where you risk getting hit. He'll even be able to have fireballs and coconuts rain down from the sky, which makes it both easier to get hit and harder to find the coconut. All of this is also on top of having to avoid Prince Picante charging at you in his cart, which isn't too difficult, but it does add a little more to the fight. So I think all of this creates a much better showdown than the original King Caliente battle. The only thing that I think this misses out on is the fun back and forth of the tennis match, but the much higher difficulty here certainly makes this one better. 4. Gobblegut. Oh, I know that guy! He's the Ender Dragon in the Mario Mashup Pack. Gobblegut is probably the most memorable new boss for Mario Galaxy 2, and that is primarily because of it being the basis for the Mario Kart 8 track Dragon Driftway, and Mario Kart 8 is a little popular. Well, after fighting the boss, I have to say that that status is pretty warranted. In the battle, he'll fly around a planetoid, occasionally even digging through it. On Gobblegut's body, there will be 6 bulging red segments, and to defeat him, Mario has to pop each one by spinning. This can actually be somewhat challenging, but luckily, whenever Gobblegut digs through the ground, these segments will get stuck for a moment. Not only does it feel good to hit one of these, but it's especially satisfying if you manage to chain a bunch of hits together. You don't even have to wait for Gobblegut to dig down. If you're skilled enough, you can also hit him while he's still in the sky. I love whenever bosses contain skips that are hard to perform, which is part of the reason I love Odyssey's boss fight so much. The way Gobblegut moves around itself can also make it easy for you to get hit if you laser focus too hard on attacking him. All around, I think they did a fantastic job with this boss's visual design and mechanics. 3. Fiery Gobblegut. Just like Dino Piranha, Gobblegut also got the well-earned privilege of having a second version. The additions are pretty simple, but also effective in making the fight more challenging. Not only are there now pools of lava on the planetoid, but fireballs can also rain down from the sky. So for just being a harder version of the original fight, I think this deserves to place right above it. 2. Mega Hammer. Speaking of bosses included in the Mario Mashup Pack, we have the guy that was forcibly turned into an iron golem. This one looks way worse. Luckily though, I think the mechanics on this fight were pretty fantastic. It's safe to say that Bowser Jr. got much better fights than his dad here, as each one was totally unique. For Mega Hammer, he'll stay in the head, so Mario has to try to find some way to hit him. Luckily, the arena has a Yoshi egg, meaning this is our second Yoshi-based fight. Mega Hammer is much more difficult than Gigalactus, but the general idea is pretty similar. It will shoot out bullet bills, and Mario has to use Yoshi to spit them back out into the mech. There are 3 weak spots, 2 on the chest and 1 on the back, each requiring 2 hits to take out. out. Now by itself, it already feels pretty good to just hit the spots with bullets, but the fight gets even more fun if you want to do it fast. Since the mech shoots out 2 bullets at a time, you can actually hit the boss multiple times per cycle. The timing is pretty strict though if you want to do it as fast as possible, as Mega Hammer will be able to block its weak points temporarily upon being hit. But that's what makes it so fun to land a double, and in turn makes the fight a whole lot more engaging. That's all on top of Mega Hammer's other attacks like creating shockwaves with its hammers. Combine that with the flying bullet bills, and it can actually be somewhat tricky to avoid taking damage. I would say, of the bosses we've seen so far, Mega Hammer is probably the most difficult. Once all 3 weak spots have been destroyed, Bowser Jr. gets revealed in the cockpit. From there, it takes 2 more shots, and the fight can come to a close. This definitely turned out to be one of the game's strongest battles, and I'm really happy with how well it managed to use Yoshi. 1. Bowser Jr.'s Boomsday Machine. Like I said, Bowser Jr. has a lot of good fights. Considering Gobblegut was also in a Bowser Jr. stage, he's pretty much taken over the top portion of this list. The reason I like the Boomsday Machine the best comes down to 2 things. For starters, it's another fight that's focused on my favorite power-up, the Cloud Flower. Happy that of all the power-ups in this game, the Cloud Flower was the one to get 2 boss fights. Meanwhile, these dorks got nothing. Losers! Secondly, this fight is definitely the hardest in the game. Around the arena, there will be several gusts of wind blowing upward, and in order to defeat Bowser Jr., Mario has to ride up these gusts of wind with a cloud platform. Then from there, he has to parkour over to Jr.'s head, which can be a little difficult since Bowser Jr. will also shoot out electricity that can destroy the cloud platforms. Now that's just how it is on the first hit. What I like about this fight is that it ramps up a lot after each bit of damage. So in the second phase, the mech will now be able to suck in air, which will also completely throw off the cloud platforms and in turn make reaching Jr. a much bigger challenge. Additionally, Bowser Jr.'s cage at the top will sometimes electrify itself, so it's important to time your ground pound correctly or else you'll get hit. And then, once the final stage begins, he decapitates you. The Boomsday Machine will rise up from the ground to reveal tank tires. Not only does that allow the mech to move now, but it also makes it much taller. This moves all of its attacks up higher too, which I found to be much more difficult to avoid while jumping on the clouds. This also means you have to get higher up to actually hit him, which requires you to find a new route since the wind gusts don't quite reach that far. It is extremely fun jumping between all of the flying clouds to reach Jr., which is the main reason I loved this boss so much. It implements platforming in a perfect way and feels genuinely good to actually defeat, especially in its Comet version where you only have 1 HP. So for being such a creative fight that implements my favorite power-up in a challenging way, I think Bowser Jr.'s Boomsday Machine is the best boss fight in Super Mario Galaxy 2. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you consider the stupid bird races to be boss fights and hate me for not including them? Let me know in the comments. I had a lot of fun making a video on this game. It's nice to get the chance to talk about something new. If you all have any other Galaxy 2 ideas, feel free to let me know in the comments as well, because I recorded my entire playthrough and I'd love to be able to make more content with that footage. I'm thinking a green star or normal star ranking could be pretty fun at some point. But before I go, I've got to thank my members being Octopon, Nathaniel B, Stuffy Ant, Expired Crazy Person, RichDo29, Maidzio2, Ho Jim, Linhard Von Hevering, Fredbear's Diner, Magnus and Larslot, Trifector, Tibby, King Drybones, Mario Master 101, Hippopotamus, Levi Strux, Nuclear, Cassie Channel, Blessed Tiger, Wyatt Derpy, Yanni the Duck, Trader Mo, Mevins 2001, Enchanted Skull, SMA, B Major 2003, Sir Musty, Belandor, Cinder CC, Jade Avery, Prunzel Clone, Thicky Reiki, Ungenio TM, CW McCain, Tesseract, JubeTube, Jameson Pageson, Z Frost, Concanut, Keep, and Christian Flattery Sequel Edition. But anyways, Drybones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.